Hello to everybody. Let me to introduce the course structure of Module 3, entitled The Way Forward for Safer Pharmaceuticals, the Hospital Wastes, Their Impact and Management. It consists of 2 lessons. Lesson 1.1. Contaminants Impacting Our Life. Lesson 1.2 for the future anticipate the problem, safer and greener pharmaceuticals. So, we are going to speak about the way forward for safer pharmaceuticals. I'm Emilio Benfenati, and I'm the head of the Department of Environmental Health Sciences at the Istituto di Ricerche Farmacologiche Mario Negri in Milan, Italy. And in particular, now we are going to speak about the contaminants and how they are impacting our life. Indeed, the issue is very well known, because there are a lot of contaminants which are not controlled from many multiple sources. And this has an impact, as I think about the decline of the species, the climate change, but there are many more issues of concern, unfortunately. This is our responsibility. We are able to think that water, air, and food are illimited. So we think, and we are wrong, that they are, without any boundaries, and they are free. The use of air, water, soil, energy, after in some cases there are fees. But also in these cases, the cost is not really related to all the costs in all the levels of why we are consuming certain kinds of resources. And also, we are thinking that the environment is a kind of magic landfill. So we put the waste in the environment and the waste magically disappears. This is not true. Unfortunately, this is very wrong. And we have the example of plastic everywhere. So, there are, for instance, in the oceans, islands, which merged, composed of plastics indeed. There is not only the plastic that we see on the beaches in our environment, but there are also microplastics in our life since our birth. For instance, a very recent study found that microplastics are in every human placenta. So now, microplastics, they are invisible, but even with the newborn, even the babies, they are somehow affected and they have to deal with this kind of pollution. Let's consider this figure, the herd, and in some cases the resources are already consumed. So, we have no more rooms to further add other input into our environment. Let's think about, for instance, the species which disappeared, the animals, the plants. Here have gone forever destroyed. This is not something which occurred in the past. This is something which occurs every day. So, for instance, in the Netherlands, here, very close to us, 90% of amphibians frogs, and so they disappeared. And this is not something related to the environment. This has a lot of consequences. Even with the help, some of our human beings, we were considered, well, the species is immortal. Actually, it happened in the past that our population almost disappeared before the Homo sapiens. There were a few tens of individuals in Africa. Now, of course, we are many more. But still the pollution, the climate change, the lack of food, they are causing a lot of issues and millions of people are dying for this kind of situation, and they are moving away from the world, away from the lack of food. They have to escape from flooding. So, this happens in many countries, and this has a global impact on the population level, and this also is impacting our individual lives. Indeed, nowadays, we are speaking about One Health, so the life of human beings is very strongly, deeply related to the environment and to the health study of animals, and it is our choice if we want to live in a pleasant situation or in a green environment. And this is not only a matter of aesthetics. It is something that relates very profoundly to our human health. Let's think about the pollinators, the bees, the butterflies. They, in the last year, declined for 75%, and this also affected birds, because birds are eating insects, and this also is affecting the production of fruit, and we are eating fruit, and so this of course has huge consequences. Let's imagine that at a certain point in a few years we will not have fruits. This is something that surely impacts not only bees. This figure here represents the trend of carbon dioxide, the CO2, starting from 1960. This is measured in a remote location in Hawaii, and we see continuous changes. And very shortly, if we proceed in this way, we will reach 450, and at this point, there will be a lot of consequences. Unfortunately, this situation is related to many complex factors. So, there's a scientific issue related to variations between multiple components, but there are many stakeholders, many players, and industry. They don't want to spend the money in many cases to, let's say, protect the environment. Citizens, we are not very informed, in some cases even skeptical. Education, unfortunately, is quite poor. And politicians, they are thinking in the short term because they mandated for a few years, but the impact of this is affecting our life, will affect the life of our children and our next generation. Even if today we stop eating this, anyhow, with global change, we will require at least 1 century to come back to the situation with which occurred a few years ago. And because it is not an immediate restoration that will occur. So, we need a global solution. All the players have to be actively involved. The European Commission started this process, for instance, and they promoted this initiative, which is called the Green Deal, and the target is to have zero pollution, is something very ambitious, which requires effort, participation from everybody, including ourselves, including politicians, including industry, including all players and stakeholders. Thank you for your attention.